Welcome to Asian Business Owners. I'm Carmen, host of the podcast. This is my co-host, Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
And Marco. Hi, Marco.
Nice to meet you.
How are you
Thanks
doing?
for having me.
How are you doing today?
Very good.
How is the traffic coming here?
Very bad.
So Marco, as we can guess from your first name, you're
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
You used to live in Italy, in Milan.
Yeah.
You told me you also lived in Paris for a
Yeah.
while. And you moved to Hong Kong in 2017.
Yes.
And you became the CEO of Venchi APAC.
Yeah.
Correct. So Venchi is a fine Italian chocolate and gelato company
Yeah.
offering a wide selection of chocolate bars, spreads, and gift boxes. And it has a 140-year history.
Mhm.
It started in Turin, and it's present in more than 70 countries worldwide. So in Asia, it's spread across, help me, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, Macau, Australia, Taiwan, Indonesia, China.
Yeah.
Am I forgetting something?
So the best would be to say we are not present in Korea, Thailand, India, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos.
Okay. Good question. Good answer. So I guess as you're the CEO of Venchi
Yeah.
APAC, you travel a lot. You're
Yes.
always catching a plane. You also, soon you'll be a father.
Yes.
Um,
Very soon.
very soon. So how do you handle that? All of that? How do you adapt? Do you think adaptability is a quality necessary for someone with such a high level position?
Yeah, I think it's for your survival. I mean, you have no choice.
Yeah.
First, the cultures are very different. Even we tend to say we tend to identify Asia Pacific as a whole region, but there are many, many differences and nuances and the way of dealing with the different cultures, customs, and people in general. So first of all. Second of all, it's a big region. So you travel early morning, you arrive at night, you have little sleep, you spend a lot of time in airports, planes are in delay, especially in some places, transportation is not always the most comfortable thing. Temperatures sometimes are not particularly easy. So when you travel to Southeast Asia, I did a round trip between United States, Thailand, and so on in March. I did a very long trip, and basically I was touching the four seasons, literally.
Yeah.
So I was in New York where we had 2 degrees. I was in Miami where we had 22. Then I went to Bangkok where we had 33. I went to Singapore where we had 35, and then I came back to Hong Kong and we had 18, 19. So yeah, and then I got, of course, a cold and I had the fever for 3 days when I came back. But so you need to adapt because it's especially when you have a regional job, it's a lot of traveling, a lot of night calls. You're always switched on.
We were talking about meditation.
Yep.
Do you do that, or how do you cope with this? All this changes.
No, I don't
all
do
the time?
meditation. What I usually do is that I seize time on the plane to, have my readings, basically. So in the end, the upside of all this traveling is that you have plenty of time on the plane and so on. So if you're not too tired, I'm happy to read a book. I'm happy to read, the news. I'm happy to read The Economist. I'm happy to read some papers, some research on the iPad on the plane and so on. So at least you have a little bit of time to do these kind of things.
Okay. And how do you grow and develop Venchi in the Asia Pacific region? Is it a priority for the company?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Why? I need more than yes.
Yeah. So it's a priority for the company because if you want to be, I think, a globally exposed brand, you cannot just let Asia go. So Asia, if we look at consumption, exposure of all the global brands and in general, the number of the big numbers. So we're talking about population, average GDP, blah, blah, blah. So not to become boring, but you cannot just say no.
And how is it different to develop Venchi in Asia versus in Europe or in the West?
Well, Western world, I think the two major differences is in on personnel management and in general how people perceive the work. So how you build the teams and how fast you can go. Europe is a low growth, slow paced environment. Everything has a reason, right? I mean, I think the whole world has different stage of development. No, I mean, if you look at Ray Dalio, and he talks about cycles that are at 500 years long, no, and Europe has reached a strong stage of development in terms of social development, human protections. It has had a very long, I mean, before the invasion of Ukraine, had a very long period of peace. Mm-hmm. And it has been a country that had basically wars every 3 years for the last 2,000 years. So from World War II, Europe has been a peaceful place. Together with that, I think it comes, a lot of, I would say a lot of regulations of things and constitutions and labor protection rights and so on that are made specifically to keep the whole territory and the whole region stable, right? So with this comes, I would say, a lower pace of growth. The United States is actually the only country that I have to say that never staged a war, but is a relatively young country compared to Europe and the European sub-countries. No, when we talk about US is still a big engine of growth, a big engine of innovation, a big engine of technological development, a big engine of opportunities for people who wants to thrive. No, but they basically play the same old playbook, which they welcome immigration, they welcome diversity, and they welcome all sorts of people that can contribute positively to the country. So they have this amazing way of integrating people from abroad.
So you think diversity plays a part in success for country?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh.
And for a company
and again, Europe now is facing sort of a slow pace of growth is also in terms of demographics, but given the specificity of the territories, that there are many, many places with one single ethnicity, but with many historical different backgrounds, Europe is, except with the exception of the UK and I think a bit of France, is struggling to accept immigration and basically making immigration a value, right? It's just like that. And politics is getting a little bit more intense in terms of acceptability. You know, so there is a polarization of people who see immigration as positive and see immigration as negative. Asia Pacific is, I think, even 200 years back, because the countries are very diverse, both in ethnicity and in historical background. Most of them are still in a rapid stage of development, so they're still going on the curve. And within Asia Pacific, you have very different countries with very different stage of development. Japan has similar problems to Europe in terms of demographics and so on. Korea had a tremendous growth rate. So it went really from poverty in the 1970s to sort of a GDP parity comparable to the European countries, but is rapidly deteriorating in terms of demographics and so on, and also in terms of social stability, as struggles that basically they are paying the price of a rapid development. No, so sometimes the economic growth doesn't go with the social, the labor, and the welfare growth, right? Japan, which is a country since many, many years and has had his own society structure, has his own society development, has own civil rights, civil duties and so on. It's very different, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very old country,
yeah,
like most of Europe is, and is actually facing a bit of the struggle that Europe has. Acceptance of immigration, a low demographic, slow growth, or even no growth for many years, demographic decline, so similar to that. If you take Indonesia, which basically sits in the same region, as a totally different,
other countries that you're focusing on more in Asia to grow?
I wouldn't say so. I think we are basically devoting our attention in different ways, but to all the region. So the approach we have in China now, and the approach we have in Japan, and the approach we have in Southeast Asia is very different, because also for us, those countries are at a different stage of maturity in terms of business.
And how do you adapt to each Asian market in terms of the strategy, the offer, maybe the teams, also maybe the product itself, like the flavors, the design of the stores, and also what triggers the decision to go for a directly owned shop or joint ventures?
I don't think we have a high degree of local adaptability, in the sense that, thank God, being a confectionery brand, which in any case is perceived by the customers as an imported brand that belongs to Europe, and chocolate is one of the few niche products, I think together with wine, that customers recognize that this is not a product belonging to the history and belonging to the roots of the various Asian regions. So the advantage of being an international brand is that we are basically able to tap and to leverage on our existing offering. For what concerns gelato, which is the product that gives us a little bit more flexibility, we have local flavors. But if you ask me, do you put less sugar in your recipes for the Asian market? No. Do you develop specific chocolate products that are specifically exclusive to the Asian market? No. So you go to Miami and you go to Tokyo, and the stores offer the same product. Then if you tell me, customers have different preferences and different spending patterns, absolutely yes. So there are countries that are more into self-consumption, there are countries that are more into gifting, and so we adapt our merchandising, our vision merchandising to those. But this happens also within the same country. You have stores that have more inclination to gifting customers and more inclination to self-consumption customers, even in Hong Kong itself. So the product mix is very different from store to store. Store in the new territories and store in Central, totally different customers.
I saw a store. It's vegan.
Yeah.
Are you developing more and more?
It's not really vegan. I would say we haven't identified a name for the store yet, but I would say that it's a store that wants to carve out our healthier offering. So it's basically a big slice of a cake of our product offering. So we offer products that are plant-based, products that are with low sugar, and products that are dark.
And this comes from something like the trends?
Well, yeah, of course there is a trend. Of course, the Asians and especially the Chinese are more, because the Japanese are not really reluctant to sugar, but the Chinese definitely, they have a palate which is more reluctant to sugar. And definitely, you need to have an offering which is very wide and can really cater also to specificities of the market which are a little bit against sugar. So there is an old saying in China that they tend to say that the sugar is bad for them. It's always historical, right? So sugar, basically, the overconsumption of sugar, you can read the glucose revolution, is basically the main driver of diabetes and fat and heart disease and so on. So in a country where up to 50 years ago, healthcare was really bad, there was no dental assistance, or, getting a sort of cure was a complication, because people living in a village and a hospital is at 200 kilometers. This was really 45, 50 years ago, even less than that. And in some cases, it's still like that. The mindset is correct. An overconsumption of sugar, and we see how many trillions of dollars the United States are spending to cure sugar-related disease. It's an issue.
Yeah.
I'm curious on gifting. Obviously, here we have in Greater China a lot of trend towards gifting. What makes as a percent of sales like gifting, let's say, in Greater China versus your other markets?
The other markets, I think it's between 15 to 20%, and is exactly double in Greater China. So we're running at 40%.
And on China, because obviously this has been an incredible success story, right? And then you went by yourself.
Success is determined on the long run. So for the moment,
stores,
it's a growth story. It's a growth story.
So you went in by yourself, basically. So tell us a bit more about China. What is
Well, I think it's also cultural. Italians, they tend to be not really, I would say, how should I put it? We don't really trust people.
Okay.
That's the point. So we are always thinking that somebody's cheating on us.
Suspicious.
Yeah, suspicious. Okay. So, and this I think is cultural, right? So we're always very skeptical. We have always this backside of the brain where we are thinking where somebody's fooling us, right? Or is cheating on us. Also because we are, I would say, a country of people that tendentially make jokes, is enjoying life. And so the other side of the coin is that, okay, we make jokes, take people from Tuscany, from the Tuscan region, are notably people that makes a lot of jokes, but are notably people that they have very little trust on others.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to be very skeptical and suspicious on anybody who is outside of the community. No, this is a typical cultural pattern. Nothing, not rocket science. So when we talk about partnerships, we never really had on the table somebody willing to make, strong partnership with us, right? And therefore, we really had no choice. We wanted to go direct. We said, okay, this is a big, profitable market, so we should do it direct. No. Then, of course, nobody remembers that we entered China 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and before becoming, a 50-plus story, it took us a long time. So, of course, you have no connection, you have no guanxi, you have no this, you have to build everything bottom up. Of course, it takes more time. But in the end, what we have seen, and the trend has been like that, I don't think there is now not anymore a global brand with global ambitions that would go in partnership in China at the moment. You might have partnerships in smaller markets because of the economy of scale, but not in China mainland.
It takes
Right.
a long time, but how do you approach it?
You have two French here.
Yeah.
Look at how much the French luxury conglomerates, and not only luxury conglomerates, we can talk about Decathlon, for example, which is not a luxury conglomerate, or we talk about Carrefour, how much money capital they have deployed in China in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And they did it on their own. Even the French conglomerates, just now passed like AXA, BNP Paribas, Crédit Agricole, all the big construction companies and the car makers and so on. They have deployed a lot of capital in China. Yeah, maybe the car makers, which is a strategic sector for China, tends to be more regulated, like the banking, like the insurance. But these, we're talking about a country where, foreigners, they were willing to invest. No, foreign direct investment has always been source of growth and wealth for the Chinese economy.
But how did you approach this? How did you enter this market? Because it's not only about
With the most
willing to
basic
do
way.
it. It can be difficult. It
In
can
a very
be challenging.
Italian way. Yeah, in a
So
very
what's
Italian
the
way.
Italian way?
A now very successful outlet group, which is Florencia Village. They were the first ones to bring basically the European style of outlet malls a la MacArthur/Glen in China in 2011. They were basically Italian entrepreneurs from Tuscany that's very brilliant, decided to invest in China in this venture. And they offered us a location because they knew the brand in Italy. And said, why don't you... So our first store was in Tianjin, Florencia Village, in 2011, together with the first outlet in China. I'm not sure if it was the first outlet, but for sure it was the first European-style outlet village. It then became so popular in China, so much so that now I think they have a multi-site business, Florencia Village. Value retail followed, and MacArthur/Glen never really came in. So that's the way we started. So again, in a very Italian way, our Italian compatriots that offered an opportunity for us.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So hopefully the China growth will continue the story. Like,
Yeah.
so what's the, I see a lot of interest, right, from international in the chocolate space, right?
Yeah.
So in the last year, I guess they had bought a huge business in Brazil.
Yeah.
billion. Hotel Chocolate, have you seen that deal?
Yeah. 27 times the EBITDA.
Crazy multiple. So what's the end game for Venchi?
Well, I think there is a huge white space. I think we need to have the ambition to become $1 billion company for sure. Why? I mean, the problem of the confectionery market and especially in the premium, and especially when we talk about retail, is that the sustainability of the business model on a retail basis is very difficult because of seasonality and because overall of attractiveness and consumption. The market is very stagnant, not much innovation, not many new brands, always the same players, old playbook, modern trade and the travel retail, boxes, praline. So there hasn't been really an innovative business model on that. That said, the market is very polarized. It's 130 billion, cosmetic industry is valued at 230 billion US dollar. Confectionery, all in all, including, count lines, modern trade is 130 billion. Of these, 60% belongs to the premium segment, which is just to give you a frame, it's the linked segment within modern trade. It's a $60 billion market, all over the world. Linked, which is a great player and a great company that we really look up to. The turnover is $5 billion. So they catch basically a market share of 8-9%, I think.
Wow.
And of the 60 billion premium market, taken out the modern trade, there is a 20 billion US dollar of market for premium brands in the retail space. Retail space means department store, means stores, means airport locations and so on. It's 25 billion according to recent estimation. And we are 1% of that. We are 1%.
Wow.
So we are 250 million turnover, and this market is 25 billion. So, and I think the largest company that ever sort of reached a sizable business in that segment was Godiva, which I think at the latest record, because then we lost track, I think also the market analyst and so on with their split over in 2017-18. I think at the peak of Godiva was $1.1 billion company, 1.1 in a market of 20 billion. So it's very fragmented.
Yeah.
It's extremely fragmented market. There are many French players, many Belgian players, many American players, many local players. So if you ask me, do you still think there is a white space? Yeah, of course, huge. And it doesn't mean that the market will consolidate at one point, because I think the confectionery reminds me a little bit of the beer market. Beer market, I think 30 years ago, I mean, you are former banker, so probably you were looking at that, was extremely fragmented. You had a lot of local players. Every country had at least 3-4 brands and so on. And then, at one point there was a massive consolidation. Now I think it's 4 or 5 major global players, right? AB InBev, Heineken, Carlsberg, the Japanese, Budweiser is a part of AB InBev. Yeah. So, and they mixed American, AB InBev actually South African, no? I mean, the company originally. They bought companies everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, only in Italy, I think, I can count at least 10 beer brands that are extremely popular. So, and I think the confectionery probably has to go in that direction.
Other question? You had the question about the...
Oh, no, I was
Yeah.
wondering with the prices of cocoa, skyrocketing, our Venchi chocolate going to become more expensive?
Not in the short term, but likely in the medium run. But it depends a lot on how the cocoa price fluctuation will go. This has been for sure driven by speculation massively. I mean, again, you're an ex-banker, so you know better than me. Some hedge fund enjoyed this moment of scarcity. There is increasing demand for cocoa beans. Why? Because people is cutting on sugars. So if you want to compensate sugar, you have two choices. Either you put more cocoa beans and you make dark chocolate, or you have no choice. So yeah, there is a climate change issue. There is an industry, as I said, that has basically been sleeping on an eternal supply from West Africa at a low price, with very little turnover of and modernization of the cultivations. The plants are old, they need to be replaced, but nobody wanted to take a 7-year gap because the cocoa beans, they will give fruit after 6-7 years. So this means that you have to give up on your production, so basically on your revenues to replace, because then at the same time, the EU law on the deforestation is affecting cocoa and coffee beans, doesn't allow, those countries to produce and basically to start a new cultivation on deforested areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very important thing. So at one point, the industry is going to suffer by basically its own laissez-passer approach in the last years.
Mm.
So there is scarcity. The yield of the cocoa bean cultivation are lower than before.
I was about to ask also, will that affect the price of the products in store?
It depends a lot on where it will land. The price where generally will land in the future. So this is a commodity that is traded. There are traders and producers of chocolates, because we're talking about cocoa beans basically being traded at the London Stock Exchange, which is the most important, of course. That's, the traders then they fix their price and they make their price according to the price of cocoa beans. So it depends a lot. So
Okay.
It has come down. So to give you a proportion on how the economic cycles and all the things now, they get an acceleration and can go really ballistic in a very short time. It was £2,000 per metric ton up to a year ago. It went to 10,000 plus, and now it's back to 6,000. So we're still talking about it went up not 50%, 5 times, 400%, and now it's up to 200%. So going back to 2000, I don't foresee that possible. If you look at gas prices, even now we have gas abundancy, and in Europe, and even oil. I mean, there is a huge abundance of oil now in the market, but it's not really going back to $30 per barrel, right? So it's still, keeping a median, an average, which is above the market circumstances, right? So we foresee there will be an increment. How much of this we can digest? I think we will digest majority of the increment. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the consumers will digest the majority, but it depends a lot. This is an industry. It depends a lot on what the competitor will do.
Okay.
It's not a cartel, so it's a private business, private economy. So any brand will increase prices. But again, these are, I would say, sadly, one of the effects of the climate change overall, that we need to be very careful of, because I think there will be many industries in the future that might be at risk of changes. And also the industry has to take, this is a wake-up call that has to take some measurements, because the reality is that the exploitation of the workers and the farmers, as you have seen in many, Netflix documentaries and internal documentaries, has been really, we were turning really a blind eye on that. So in the end, not all the bad comes for bad. If farmers are better paid, we can still get our products. Consumer won't pay an heavy price for that, but we will have a more stable supply and industry. I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Is it something important for the company in terms of, not only the raw material, but not only the farmers, but is it also something important to people in the company?
Of course. We cannot rely exclusively on traders. So part of our supply is basically we transform cocoa beans internally. But of course, we still buy from traders.
Yeah.
So we buy chocolate from traders. I think more and more our future direction is that we want to have full control of the value chain. So we might, at one point, have the majority of our cocoa beans sourced directly at farmers and then transformed directly in our in-house.
But what does it change exactly?
Yeah, I mean, the difference is simple. When you're a chocolatier, you source your cocoa beans and you transform your cocoa beans and you make your own chocolate. When you're a confectioner, you buy chocolate from traders, then you can have, exclusive recipe. We do. We have exclusive blends that we want, and we do. We want specific kind of cocoa beans.
But how is it more sustainable to do it in-house?
If it is, I think you basically cut part of the margin of the trader. So this means that you can pay the same amount of price that you pay to the traders, but you pay to the farmers. So in a way, it's more sustainable. We have been financing a cooperative, cooperative in Ecuador for many years, and they have been supplying cocoa beans for us, and we've been financing their schools, and we've been financing their cocoa plantations and so on. Of course, their production capability cannot sustain our needs.
Yes.
So part of our products are directly sourced. Yes, of course. And we do pay a higher price for that.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Cool. Now it's time for the quick questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we have 5 questions. You need to answer as quick as possible, but it's not difficult. It's just fun. So ready?
Yeah.
It's not strategic question. It's easy.
Go ahead.
Your favorite city in Asia?
Hong Kong.
Your best holiday in Asia?
Niseko.
That is in Japan.
Skiing, yeah.
Yeah. Your favorite restaurant in Hong Kong?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Be careful what you say.
Yeah. I would say Hutong.
Your favorite gelato flavor?
Pistachio.
No hesitation. AC Milan or Inter Milan?
AC Milan.
Well,
Big time.
Cool. And now the fun fact question.
Yep.
So now you have more time to think. How many languages are spoken across Asia? Can be an approximation.
I think close to 100.
2,300.
Okay.
That's it.
Interesting.
Interesting, right?
Whoa.
Because there's a lot of dialects also.
Yeah, if we include the dialects, then you might be right.
In Europe, it was like 200.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay, last question now. To wrap up, what would you say are the 2 or 3 elements to be a successful leader?
I think listening, internally and externally, meaning that you need to have somebody always to look up and to learn from, and doesn't necessarily mean this is your boss. Can be anybody else, but I think this is a very key element of a leader, that if you're still willing to learn and you identify somebody to learn from, can be an organization, can be a priest, can be whoever, but learning, the basics of learning is listening, because when you learn, it's because you are listening to somebody else speaking, and you need to interiorize, and you need to really make the best out of it. So whoever you are and in whatever position you are, you need always to have somebody who you can learn from.
Yeah.
So that's for me the basics. At the same time, so this is an external listening. The internal listening is you need to listen to your colleagues and basically to your organization. Okay. You cannot stop at one point listening to them and turn a blind eye or to what's happening. And this means a lot, because the first symptom, I think, of a failing company is really the leadership team avoiding communication and contact with their organization at all levels.
Yeah.
So you really need to have this, bottom up and top down continuous approach where you can move like a like an instrument. No, you can really move up to down, and then sometimes you're flying too high. The success is driving you, and so on. And that's the right moment, to go back to the roots. No, so to go back to your organization, to go back to in our case, to the store manager, to the sales assistant, and so on, and and staying close to them. So and the second, I think it's every successful company starts from being basically nothing, zero, an idea. And I think having this startup approach that keeps you very humble with feet on the ground is the other, I would say, key secret sauce that you need to have. And this I learned from the leaders that I look at. Leaders that some have died, some are still alive.
Who, for example?
I think an Italian manager that I really look up to that has died was Sergio Marchionne. He has been the CEO of FCA, Fiat, the former Fiat. And has been a gentleman that, he was famous because he was always wearing pullovers and, blue pullovers and white or blue shirt for his entire career. Now he could go to speaking to investors, speaking to
he had a
to
signature outfit.
To anybody, yeah, he has his own, a bit like Steve Jobs, right?
Okay.
But the guy has always kept a very strong attachment first to the business, so the products, so the cars, okay, and even though he was a maniac, has been a very tough person, extremely demanding, and so on, but has always been. I always appreciated him, and I remember his interview in 2011. He joined the company. The company, it was famous, was losing €5 million a day. And he left the company debt-free. And he left the company as the seventh largest automotive group in the world. And during the American crisis, it was the moment where they became big. He asked help to the American government, and they basically merged Jeep, the former Chrysler, with FCA, and this is what changed the entire company. But I remember very well in 2012, 2013, that he left an interview and everybody was criticizing because Fiat was not launching new models, right? And he was a bit of relying always on the same models, on the success of the Fiat 500, for example. And I remember his interview, and he said, "But what do you want me to do, guys?" I said, "There is economic crisis, there is a downtrend. People is not changing the car. I cannot put the organization at risk because you want new models. Fiat simply today cannot afford to develop new models, and we need to improve the old models we have. We have to do our job in order to improve efficiencies, making better economies of scale. And this is the time where the company will focus on internal improvements and internal efficiencies. And even if you ask me more models, I'm going to tell you I'm not going to make new models." So yeah, at one point, the market was asking, and he was saying, "You know what? I need to look at the health and the wealth of my organization at the moment. We cannot afford to make new models. We're not going to make new models, right?" So, and this, I found it brilliant. And in the end, number talks, track record talks. It was a failed company on the brink of bankruptcy. The guy came in and he left the company, he merged the company with another big conglomerate. He was alone against everybody, against the trade unions, against the Italian government, against the American government, against everybody. And he died because of overwork. He died because he was working too much, and he left his health as a secondary priority. He died of a cancer that he didn't mention to anybody. And if you look at today, despite, of course, we can say that the moves of these companies are not favoring the Italian markets because they are moving the production outside of Italy and so on. But he left the company with an idea saying, okay, now we merge with this and we need to merge with somebody else. They merged with a French group. And now it's Stellantis. We still is delivering great performances. He was against everybody when he did a spin-off of Ferrari. He said, we have to spin off Ferrari from FCA, and we need to list Ferrari. We need to do an IPO in New York. And then they did a dual listing in Milan, I think. And Ferrari now, I think, is the most valuable Italian brand from a market cap perspective, if we talk about brand, I think it's 55, 60 billion market cap. And if you look at the stock price of Ferrari, you would say he got so criticized for that move. Ferrari cannot go public. Ferrari cannot belong to the stock market. I remember this. But look, I mean, he listed the company at $10 US per share, and it's at 380 now. So,
I understand. It's an inspiring person to look up
yeah,
to.
then, there's pros and cons. The guy really died because of overwork. So I don't think that's a healthy model. And I think this is a person that never stopped listening, basically to his organization, to the product, to the customers, and never stopped listening also to people that he considered being on top of him. And that's it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Marco.